Hey guys, it's Chris, and welcome back to another House of the Dragon video. Today I want to go over a new reign, this little teaser they put out yesterday. And if you hadn't seen that, I did post the whole teaser on my channel. But let's jump right in and talk about it because we will get a full trailer again this Thursday or Friday, I believe, during Comic-Con. And obviously I'll be doing a in-depth shot-by-shot breakdown as usual. So let's jump over here to the teaser. And I'll just run through it really quickly and stop on the scenes I want to talk about. We do have a few new things that are interesting. So let's jump in here and check it out, get right into it. One thing you'll notice really quickly, too, you're seeing a lot of detail. They put a lot of detail into these areas throughout the Red Keep. You see dragons everywhere, and of course that looks a lot different from Game of Thrones. And it makes sense because once Robert took over after Robert's Rebellion and during the Game of Thrones era, again, 170 years after the show or after the Dance of the Dragons, whatever, you know, Robert took down almost everything Targaryen. He got rid of anything related to dragons, so the Red Keep changed over time. But right now, during the height of Targaryen power, you're going to see little nods to their family and their history everywhere. So you have the statues, obviously, in the Red Keep of Baelor and Aegon and all those the former Targaryen kings, whereas Robert's was all kind of just plain and just kind of redecorated, and they took down all these dragons. So you got sconces everywhere, all the little detailed work. It's going to be really, really gorgeous.
George and his writing was a huge influence on me.
See, here's another example. This looks like one of our areas in the Red Keep, obviously. You see the little dragon sconce here. I mean, everything is decorated Targaryen style, so it's going to look really, really good.
It's an incredible feeling to achieve my dream.
And look at this gorgeous set they built. I mean,
you get that great call, which is the thing that every writer is.
One thing I want to mention here really quickly, you see here we have the Targaryen sigil. They're making it a point to go into all these little details, and a lot of people were asking about this. The four-legged dragon here, as opposed to the two-legged sigil we see in Game of Thrones. But we did actually see this later on in Game of Thrones. So in the beginning, when you saw the Targaryen sigil, occasionally you would see the two-legged dragon, and then later on, when Dany came to Westeros on her ship, she had the four-legged dragon sigil back. So essentially what this is saying, the idea is that this sigil has changed over time. The idea is that, you know, when Dany was coming around, Targaryens had been gone for a while. They were the last few left over in Essos, heard by Cerys, obviously Maester Aemon, Jon Snow, obviously, but as far as actual Targaryens who are known Targaryens, this sigil was not flown anymore. So when Dany went on her quest to become queen and brought it back and took over Essos and Meereen and all that kind of stuff, she brought back the sigil, which, you know, had not been around for a while. So she used a two-legged version and then later kind of morphed into a four-legged version like it used to be. So the idea is this is the original that the Targaryens used at the height of their power, and then it kind of disappeared for a long time after Robert, you know, destroyed all the Targaryens, ran them out, whatever, and the dynasty was over. And now we're going back in time to see, you know, when at the height of their power, this is what the sigil actually looked like. So I think it's a good little touch. All these little minute details makes me feel a lot better about the show for sure.
Hoping for, telling her we're going to go make this thing. And
yeah, so obviously we're getting a lot of shots of the new Iron Throne, or the old Iron Throne, I should say. And obviously this is a little more book accurate, although it's still not really close to what's in the book. In the book, it's a giant monstrosity. And it would just be unpractical to build something like that. And then, obviously, I said before, it goes into marketing, too. They'll take this throne around, or replicas of the throne, and take it down, you know, around to cons and stuff. Obviously, you can't take the giant book monstrosity around for marketing purposes. So this looks cool. It's kind of dumb, obviously, in the sense of there's all these swords sticking up here. You could just fall and die right here in the Red Keep in the throne room. But it does look better. Now, the problem I have with some of this stuff is, do they explain, you know, how it got changed for Game of Thrones? Because the idea is this is a prequel to that series. It's in the same world. It's not like an alternate universe or some bullshit like it's Marvel. So how do they explain some of these changes? And we'll talk about a little bit of that more as well, because, for example, we see Dragonstone and the map table that Aegon the Conqueror originally built that we saw Dany use, and that room looks a lot different as well from when she was using it, Stannis, etc. So there are some things that are kind of bugging me. Again, it looks better here, obviously, but they can't really explain the change because there's not going to be like a segue into Game of Thrones, right? Unless they do another show between these time periods or whatever. So it's like, you know, keep the consistency to some level, because obviously Game of Thrones is after this. So I don't know how they explain some of these changes, but it does absolutely look gorgeous. This is one of the shots I obviously want to talk about. Valyrian the Black Dread. We'll talk about another shot here in a second, but they have it accurate here as far as the bones being black. Dragon bones were known to be black because they have a lot of like iron and stuff in their blood and bones or whatever it may be. They're like super creatures, super strong, and the bones are always described as black in the books. We didn't see that in Game of Thrones. They were white. We saw Arya climbing around in the skull. Obviously, we saw Cersei down below, and this is when Robert had moved them from the Red Keep to down below the Red Keep somewhere from the throne room. One thing I'll say is in these shots of the throne room, I have not seen dragon skulls. Now, they may be off to the side somewhere. Maybe they're in kind of alcoves or something off in the sides that we just can't see them with some of these shots, but they're supposed to be at this point, at least in the Red Keep, or maybe some other king has them moved up there or something. That's possible later because we do have obviously more Targaryens that rule after this. So we don't know exactly where they're going to be. Is it going to be Dragonstone? Is it going to be King's Landing? Some of these things I want to be consistent is all I'm saying as far as like the transition between this show, this time period, and Game of Thrones. So obviously this is Valyrian the Black Dread, and we'll get another shot here in a little bit where they almost worship this thing. It's like an altar, so it's pretty cool. I believe this is obviously these battle scenes that we see here are going to be the War for the Stepstones. Like this shot here, for example, you see over here the sigil here. It's kind of under me. Let me move myself up there out of the damn way. But you see right over here, you have the sigil of House Valyrian, and obviously we talked about before, Daemon Targaryen takes over the Stepstones along with Corlys Velaryon. They work together to take over these Stepstones from the Triarchy. So I believe these are the Stepstone battles we're going to see here. And we have some other battle shots as well. It's going to open pretty strong. I would say the cold open would be, like we talked about in the live stream the other day, the cold open will be the Great Council of 101. And they'll probably jump right in to really establish the power of dragons and Targaryens at this time. They'll probably jump right into the War of the Stepstones and show Daemon arriving on Caraxes and all this cool stuff. So likely this is a battle scene from that.
Great to have Ryan, who's a great writer.
Now, one thing I question here, this is probably going to be the same battle, but why are there Kingsguard here? We have Harold Westerling right here, who is at this point Lord Commander of the Kingsguard. We see Rhaenys back here, Targaryen, Corlys Velaryon here, and this is obviously when they're directing a scene. But if this is the War for the Stepstones, I don't recall there being Kingsguard involved because Viserys, he supported Daemon's war, so I don't know if he sent the Kingsguard to help him out in some way, but this is obviously Kingsguard here during this battle. So I could be wrong. Maybe this is just something completely separate, but this is the only real major battles we're going to get as far as Season 1 because obviously at this point the Targaryen War itself has not started, the Civil War, and so I don't know of any other battles that the Kingsguard will be involved in at this point. But Rhaenys should be involved as well. We'll see. She will probably hold down some area from the air, some aerial area, from, because she is probably going to help her husband. She was a dragon rider, and she is probably going to burn a few ships and stuff from the air for the Triarchy and all that during this war. So I'd imagine she'll be involved as well. It doesn't specifically say in Fire and Blood and all that Rhaenys participated, but I believe she would. The great thing about it is we don't know all the details. It comes from an unreliable narrator, but she was a powerful dragon rider as well, so I think she will be involved.
He's going to do his best to remain faithful.
There's Dark Sister. We talked about this sword so many times. Daemon will be carrying this during this show. This is what we wanted to see in Game of Thrones, where Bloodraven had ended up taking this sword when he was born later and was one of the great bastards, and he was legitimized. And he went to the wall and beyond the wall, obviously, to become the Three-Eyed Raven. And he took this sword with him, apparently, when he left or when he was sent there. So we wanted to see this sword in Game of Thrones, and I had speculated that we did at one point when Mira was in the cave and the White Walkers were attacking. We saw her grab a sword. Obviously, that later turned out to be just a regular old sword, so they should have included that. Those are the little touches that would have made Game of Thrones even better. So I'm glad they're paying attention to all the detail here. But Dark Sister, probably one of my favorite all-time swords from Westeros, Valyrian steel. And, of course, House Targaryen has two, Blackfire and Dark Sister. So it's cool to see the connection there. So we know you're familiar with Game of Thrones. You're familiar with Bloodraven, Brynden Rivers. And he ends up getting this sword later on. But we see it being used here by Daemon Targaryen, who will be essentially the main character and probably a fan favorite. Again, dragon architecture. I'm assuming this is the same dragon from the map room, but we'll see another shot of the map room. It's hard to see because we did see Stannis sitting in front of this in Game of Thrones. So this is probably Dragonstone.
There's always a
Just shows you all the
suspense to
detail.
how good is it.
Oh yeah, real quick here. This should be Aegon the Second, I believe. I'm not absolutely 100% sure, but obviously at this time period, it should be. This should be once Queen Alicent marries Viserys, who obviously is Rhaenyra's father. They were BFFs, and then she gets married, becomes Queen Alicent, and that's what starts the rift. Was the kind of a thing between their children. So this should be Aegon the Second Targaryen. This would be Queen Alicent and Viserys' firstborn son, Aegon, and he is who will be essentially the other side on Team Green versus Rhaenyra. When it really starts out as the Hightowers versus Rhaenyra, but Aegon gets talked into taking the throne, although Rhaenyra was named the heir at the time. So this should be Aegon the Second. We haven't seen him. I haven't seen any casting news on him. This should be our first look at Aegon the Second in his younger days, and he will also be a dragon rider as well. And I won't spoil anything here, but shit happens. So let's move on. But we do have Aegon the Second. Now, this here is what I was going to talk about. So this is the painted table. So you can see here, this is Dragonstone. This looks outstanding. I love the look, but it doesn't look anything like Game of Thrones. Now, we do have the fireplace over here. We did see that, but it was on the side, I believe. We saw Tyrion and Dany walk through here when they first got to Westeros. This is going to be, obviously, during Rhaenyra's day as Princess of Dragonstone and heir to the Iron Throne, probably starting to plan the war here, probably her Black Council. But it looks different. Now, it looks better for sure. You got the windows over here, the seats, the table looks even better. Obviously, it would have been maintained in those days, so Stannis didn't give a shit about it. So it's just kind of a regular old brown table. But it looks different. So I don't remember seeing, you remember it's supposed to be the table. We do have a fireplace or whatever, but it should be on this side, I believe. And then back here was the big dragon thing that Stannis was sitting in front of. So maybe it's back here where we can't see it. So maybe they just kind of changed some things around or whatever. Not to say that things can't be moved for sure, but the actual architecture itself is just completely different. So at least from what I remember in Game of Thrones. So I don't like that they're being inconsistent on that. But again, this looks better. So I don't know. How do you justify an entire room changing? I don't know. Maybe perhaps the table was moved. Maybe this is a different room in Dragonstone and it was moved to another room later for whatever reason. Maybe Stannis had it moved or something. So they could explain some of that, but I just want to point out those little things that kind of catch my attention.
You have to start by respecting it. You can't start by doing different for different sake.
I love that right there. I just wanted to point that out. You have to start by respecting it, not doing different for different sake. And this is what I mean. They're keeping to the lore. They're keeping to the accurate history, or as far as what we know, the source material, respecting the author, and the author's obviously involved as well. And this is kind of what I worry about with Lord of the Rings. I worry about a lot because all the articles from Vanity Fair, etc., are essentially basically telling you that it's not really Tolkien. It's kind of based off Tolkien, and we don't want to get into Lord of the Rings here. We'll obviously withhold judgment. I try to be fair about all this kind of stuff. But I like hearing that he is about respecting the source material and the author and all that stuff and keeping true to what it is. Here we go, the War for the Stepstones again. I'm sure this is going to be another battle. I believe this is where we'll see Corlys up here at this table, and they're making plans for the battle or another aspect of the battle, whatever. You see all his sigils here. Here's a shot of Daemon in his armor. So this is going to be kind of probably the first shot you see of him. I'm just guessing here, as he probably gets off Caraxes in the background, walks up to this war planning table, kind of this imposing character walking up to the war table, and he takes his helmet off to reveal who it is, etc. Obviously, you kind of know who it is. He's going to get off a fucking dragon, for Christ's sake. But the point being that they're really going to set the precedent of all this, and he's going to be coming up saying, basically talking to Corlys Velaryon, the sea snake, and finding out what's going on with the battle or whatever. So this is going to probably, I would say, just a guess, the first shot we see of Daemon Targaryen. So you see these soldiers look like the Triarchy here. You got the curved swords and the different kind of clothing from Esso. So this is going to be the Triarchy during one of these battle scenes. Now this is really cool. So here's Balyrion's skull. And this is definitely Balerion the Black Dread. I mean, he is the most famous, biggest dragon in history, etc. I don't know where it's at. This is supposed to be, maybe it's Dragonstone at this time, but I think, again, we heard that these skulls are in the Red Keep, and this is where Arya climbed in in the Game of Thrones, so I don't know how they'd move this around, but it's like it's worshipped here. So what's really cool is they're throwing in some of this imagery and symbolism. Valyrians back in the old day did have Valyrian gods, but the modern day Targaryens are, worship the faith of the seven. So it's interesting here, some of the symbolism. I mean, they essentially worship this skull here of Valyrian the Black Dread. It kind of represents their power as a whole. So there's some really cool shots here. Now, this is a really interesting shot here. This looks to be around the same room, perhaps, the Valyrian skull's in. These must be old Targaryen warriors or perhaps Valyrian warriors of some sort, and it's almost like a religious altar. You have their skulls, and all these helmets are very similar. They're pointed. So this would be reminiscent of the old age of Valyria, where they were still had that kind of style as far as the helmets go. So we don't know exactly who these old skulls are. Obviously, this is something new, some detail they're adding in here. But I would imagine it's probably some tribute or whatever to past Valyrians. I don't know about Targaryens specifically, perhaps, maybe, but maybe old dragon riders or whatever. And this looks like to be like an older Essos style helmet that we've seen before. So I'd imagine it's some kind of tribute to those fallen, perhaps dragon riders, whatever it may be. It's really cool to see like how the Targaryens thought, because they really thought themselves as gods, and that was kind of the point of how they look and all that stuff, and being able to ride dragons in the first place. So really cool little details here. Now this shot here I wanted to talk about because we kind of recognize everybody in this shot. This is early on. Obviously we have young Rhaenyra over here, young Alicent. We have Laena and Laenor here as well. Rhaenys is back here, obviously Corlys. But who is this lady here? I'm imagining this is probably going to be Joanna Lannister, or formerly Joanna Westerling, the wife of Jason Lannister, who is the brother of Tywin Lannister back in these days. So it looks like we have our first Lannister here. She's certainly wearing the colors. She's got on all the gold jewelry. Obviously, I'm not 100% sure about this. It's just a guess. So this is much earlier, obviously, because we still have Laena over here. Her head is turned, and Laenor. And this is a would-be king as well during the council thing and all that stuff. So I think this may be our first Lannister we're going to see. We will see a few Lannisters in here during this show. So get to see the predecessors of Tywin and Jaime, Cersei, etc.
Together.
You got these guys beating Targaryen drums here. They have everything reversed here, like it's House Blackfire. They have red background with a black sigil. Now, this doesn't mean Blackfires. This has not happened yet. It's probably just a cool little uniform for the band here. But you see this badass armor over here, all the details. I just thought that was an interesting little shout out there, a little nod to what would later become House Blackfire. Disillusioned Targaryens that were, took the name Blackfire and took their same sigil but reversed the color. So I thought that was pretty cool. Here's our battle scene, War for the Stepstones. And you saw all this stuff in the previous teasers before, so... anyway, I just want to talk about a couple of those shots there. I thought it was pretty interesting. There's some really good detail in there. I mean, this is going to be absolutely gorgeous. But I want to mention a couple of those things. I just, a lot of this little inconsistent stuff bothers me a little bit, but there's some things they can't explain. For example, they can move that table to a different room or whatever and it not look like the same one on Dragonstone when Dany was there, or Stannis for that matter. So those little things are just things I've just noticed throughout seeing some of these teasers and all that. But really getting hyped, man. We only got 5 weeks to go, a little less than 5 weeks now. 4.5 weeks, I will say, to go until House of the Dragon. And, of course, we will continue to do our post-game live streams. And we've already started our live stream schedule back up. So we'll also be here Sunday to talk about the trailer as well, assuming we do get one. Anyway, guys, thank you for all the continued support, especially you guys on Patreon, and a huge shout-out to my executive Patreon SmokeScreen producers. You guys continue to keep this channel going. Also, shout-out to Hoonjob being the newest Patreon member as well. Also, of course, be sure to hit that subscribe button if you enjoy these videos and hanging out with the community on Sundays, all that good stuff as well. We'll be doing this throughout this whole entire series and all the other prequels as well, and a lot of other stuff to come. So, appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.